Right, so we're moving on to Brazilian football legend Pele. Now, he's died at the age of 82 after a long battle with cancer.
Nicknamed the Black Pearl and the King, Pele won 3 World Cups, and that's been unprecedented during his 21-year career, scoring 1,283 goals. Well, Aidan Magee, the legend, the finest smelling man in television, joins us now. I mean, what can we say that hasn't been said? Absolute legend. But the thing I always remember about Pele is that Pele did it all first. He did the Cruyff turn first, Messi's tricks. This guy laid the template, and I think he's the greatest of all time.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, look, you can make that argument all the time. I've mentioned on this desk many times, I don't really believe in the whole best player in the world thing. I think you can be the best in your position, but in a team sport, it's very difficult. You can put the best player, the person you think is the best player in the world, on the pitch, but if they're against another team, they're going to lose unless they've got the teammates around them. I think if it's an individual sport, it's easier to have that argument. However, if you look at Pele and what he achieved outside of sport as well, I mean, strip it back to the very beginning. I mean, Brazil's in national mourning in 1950 when they lose the home World Cup to Uruguay. He says to his father, he's a very good footballer himself, he's crying over this defeat, and he says at the age of 10 years old, "Don't worry, Dad, I'll win you the World Cup." 8 years later, they go to Sweden, he scores a hat-trick in the final, he wins the World Cup. Brazil's first World Cup as a 17-year-old. And it's important to note, Martin, that football wasn't a big thing in Brazil back then. Yeah. He wasn't even allowed outside Brazil by the government until much later in life. He played for Santos in all that time. He was named Edson Arantes de Nascimento. He was named after the American inventor Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb. That's because his family had electric in their house just prior to him his birth. He didn't even like the name Pele. He felt it was like baby talk in Brazil. It's not actually a word. It doesn't exist as a word. And then you look at his astonishing achievements in terms of winning 3 World Cups. Brazil are probably the most successful sporting nation in the world in terms of football. Footballing nation, certainly. 3 of those World Cups were with Pele really running things. And then they win it in 1958. They retain it in 62, although he's slightly injured. He's brutalised in 1966 in England. He's subjected to the most ferocious tackling by the Bulgarian side, the Portuguese side. England win the tournament.
Sounds like a horror film, that movie.
To all intents and purposes, Martin, he's finished by 1970. There are prominent Brazilian coaches.
And then we get this.
Yes, so bring us forward to 1970. That's the hug with. I mean, that game alone produced some incredible moments. I mean, England played pretty well in that game.
I think that's the best World Cup match of all time.
Yeah, it probably is. I mean, you think about the Gordon Banks save, that iconic moment. You think about the tackle by Moore, and you see the full range of Pele's. I mean, he's actually bulked up. He's bulked up for that World Cup because he's been subjected to such ferocious physical abuse in the previous tournaments.
That picture, Aidan, to me, it transcends football. Yes. Look at the brotherly love there.
I know.
Bobby Moore, the captain, had just lost, reigning champions England. He had to mark Pele all night, and he did a great job of it. Pele said Moore was the best defender he ever played against, and that picture, to me, says it all about Pele.
Exactly. I mean, Alan Mullery spoke about him recently as well. He was one of the guys charged with the task of marking him as well. Now, the issue is that he wasn't allowed to leave Brazil footballing for his career until the 80s. He went to the New York Cosmos. So after his career, it was a period of enlightenment for Pele because he was able to tour the world, and he mixed with film stars, he mixed with presidents. He was in a hugely successful film. He had affairs, he had 3 marriages.
Isn't The Great Escape?
No, it was Escape to Victory.
Escape to Victory, big one.
Successful film. Yeah, I mean, in there with. He wasn't even in his prime of his career at that point.
Yeah.
But he ended the taboo around Viagra.
Yes.
As well.
He did, 2002.
His latest marriage was in 1970. At the age of 75. So he's accomplished a hell of a lot. I met him in 2000, at the end of 2004, at the end of the Sports Personality of the Year award over at the BBC at White City, and I interviewed him for probably about 10, 15 minutes. And what was interesting is that, I mean, he didn't know me from Adam, of course he didn't, but I mean, he pushed away the security guards just to speak to me and my friend, a friend of mine from the Daily Mirror. He wanted to talk, and that says to me that he's an excellent ambassador for the game. The enlightened part comes from the fact that he toured around, he must have gone to every continent, near enough every country, and he didn't make big money from this sport either.
Nana, this has just turned into a sort of football love.
I know, I will let you get on with it, but I mean, I would just argue that I think he probably is the greatest player of all time. You can't argue with that. I mean, his first...
Well,
he won the World Cup at 17, wasn't he?
Yeah, look at the numbers as well, Nana. In 1,281 goals for Santos in 1,365 games. There is some dispute over that because it includes friendlies, but nonetheless, that output, that numbers, and we talk about Erling Haaland at the moment, I mean, that sort of output is that probably will never be surpassed, even by Ronaldo and Messi.
Yeah.